Today we are analyzing a masterclass in how not to conduct a police investigation. To give you the full picture, I have divided this video into 3 distinct parts. Part 1, the escalation. We will examine how the officer bypasses standard investigation protocols and immediately resorts to intimidation and threats of force against a passenger who appears more tired than dangerous. Part 2, the federal reveal. You will see the shocking moment the officer attempts to physically drag the man out of his seat, only to be confronted by the man next to him, an undercover air marshal who completely flips the power dynamic. Part 3, the $450,000 verdict. Stay tuned until the very end for this section. I will break down the specific laws violated, the civil rights lawsuit that follows, and I will calculate dollar for dollar exactly how much money this officer's department would likely have to pay out for this civil rights violation.
You are way too inebriated. You need to get off this plane now.
No, I'm not getting off the plane.
Sir, your eyes are...
This interaction begins with a premise that any seasoned law enforcement officer or legal observer would find immediately concerning because the officer enters the situation at a 10 out of 10 on the aggression scale without establishing any objective evidence of a crime. The officer approaches a seated passenger in a green shirt and immediately declares, "You are way too inebriated, you need to get off this plane now," essentially acting as judge, jury, and executioner within seconds of arrival. For an audience that understands constitutional rights, the red flags here are glaring because the officer is not asking questions to determine the passenger's state, such as asking for ID, asking how much he has had to drink, or performing a field sobriety test, but is instead issuing commands based on a subjective observation that the man's eyes are swimming. The passenger, who seems lethargic and confused rather than belligerent, refuses to comply, stating simply, "I'm not getting off the plane." This is a critical moment in police-citizen encounters known as the failure to de-escalate. Instead of investigating why the passenger is behaving this way, is he diabetic? Is he exhausted? Is he actually drunk? The officer takes the refusal as a personal insult to his authority. He escalates his rhetoric, invoking the events of 9/11 in a bizarre attempt to guilt or terrify the passenger into compliance, asking, "Have you heard of 9/11? And you could hijack the plane." This hyperbole is a tactic often used by officers who lack solid legal footing for an arrest. They try to create a scenario of imminent danger where none exists to justify their heavy-handedness. The situation takes a darker turn when the officer threatens to use a taser on a seated, non-violent man who has his hands visible. This threat of pain compliance for a non-violent misdemeanor, at best, is legally precarious. The passenger's response is heartbreaking and highlights the racial tension inherent in the interaction. He puts his hands up and asks, "Is this because I'm black? I'm so tired of being black." He is expressing a fatigue that resonates with many, fearing that any movement will result in violence. The officer dismisses this, insisting it is about behavior, yet he continues to offer no off-ramp for the situation, only binary choices: comply immediately or face violence and arrest. This section demonstrates a complete breakdown of professional policing, where ego drives the interaction rather than public safety protocols. Wait, stop for a moment. If this officer found cash in your pocket right now, could you legally stop him from seizing it? Civil asset forfeiture allows police to take your savings without even charging you with a crime, and hiring a lawyer to fight it costs over $300 an hour. That is why I created the Anti-Seizure Cash Protection System. It is a complete legal toolkit containing the exact scripts and packaging protocols you need to bulletproof your assets against seizure. For just $27, which is less than 10 minutes of a lawyer's time, you can protect your hard-earned money from legalized highway robbery. Get your copy of the Anti-Seizure Cash Protection System at the link below. And now, enjoy the rest of the video.
Excuse me. Relax. I'm an air marshal. This is my good friend. He's not drunk, he's not inebriated, he's none of these things.
The tension reaches a breaking point as the pressure from the flight crew mounts. The stewardess informs the officer that the pilot can only delay the flight for 15 more minutes. This external time pressure causes the officer to abandon all pretense of procedure. He decides to go hands-on, stating, "Time to go, let's go," and physically grabs the passenger's arm to drag him out of the seat. This is the moment of battery, an unwanted physical touching that, if unjustified, opens the door to significant liability. As the officer starts pulling, the man in the tank top and sunglasses sitting in the window seat, who has been quietly observing the entire debacle, decides he has seen enough. In a move that usually only happens in movies, he reaches into his pocket. The officer, likely running on adrenaline and expecting a weapon, is undoubtedly tense. But instead of a gun, the man produces a badge. He holds it up clearly to the officer's face and says the words that instantly drain the color from the officer's face. "Relax. I'm an air marshal." The transformation in the officer's demeanor is instantaneous and total. The air marshal explains that the suspect is his good friend, that he is not drunk, but merely exhausted after a long day, and that he hasn't had a drink in 15 years, having only had a sip of wine to celebrate a milestone. The officer, who seconds ago was ready to taser a man and drag him down the aisle for endangering the flight, is now suddenly standing before a federal agent who outranks him in jurisdiction and authority on that aircraft. The drunk narrative collapses immediately. The officer stammers, "Well, if I'd known that," attempting to backpedal, but the damage is done. The air marshal asserts control, telling the officer to just go on with your day. It is a humiliating defeat for the officer, exposing his earlier aggression as incompetence. He was ready to ruin a man's life, arrest him, and use a weapon on him based on a hunch that was proven 100% false by a federal law enforcement officer sitting inches away. This reveal serves as the ultimate check and balance, proving that the passenger was right all along. He was safe, he was compliant, and the only danger on the plane was the officer with the badge and the ego.
Why don't you tell me these things? I'm okay. Why is he crying?
Now let's break down the numbers. If this passenger decides to sue the police department, and he absolutely should, we are looking at a massive settlement. This is not just about hurt feelings. This is about actionable civil rights violations under 42 U.S. Code Section 1983. First, we have unlawful seizure and false imprisonment. The officer detained the passenger without reasonable suspicion of a crime. Looking tired or having swimming eyes is not enough probable cause for an arrest, especially when a federal air marshal acts as a witness to the contrary. For the unlawful detention and the humiliation of being threatened in front of a plane full of people, we are starting with a base claim of $50,000. Next, we look at assault and excessive force. The officer threatened to deploy a taser on a passive resistor. Courts have repeatedly ruled, see Armstrong versus Pinehurst, that using a taser on a nonviolent suspect is a violation of the Fourth Amendment. The threat alone, causing the passenger to fear for his safety, "Don't make me get out the taser," combined with the physical grabbing of the arm, constitutes assault and battery under color of law. This component of the lawsuit adds approximately $75,000 to $100,000. Then we have the intentional infliction of emotional distress. The passenger explicitly stated, "I'm so tired of being black," indicating deep psychological distress and fear that he was being profiled. The officer gaslit him, ignored his distress, and continued to threaten him. In a jury trial, this emotional component, particularly with the racial profiling aspect, drives the damages up significantly. We add another $125,000 for emotional distress. Finally, we have punitive damages. These are damages awarded not to compensate the victim, but to punish the wrongdoer for egregious conduct. Because the officer ignored a federal air marshal initially, refused to conduct a proper investigation, and escalated to violence immediately, a jury would likely want to send a message to the department. Punitive damages could easily reach $175,000. When you total these figures, unlawful seizure, excessive force/assault, emotional distress, and punitive damages, we land on a total estimated payout of $450,000. This is money that comes out of the taxpayers' pockets because an officer couldn't tell the difference between a tired passenger and a criminal. It is a classic example of qualified immunity, failing because the officer's conduct was so clearly unreasonable that no competent officer would have acted the same way. The air marshal didn't just save his friend from jail. He likely handed him a winning lottery ticket for a civil rights lawsuit.